Hey everyone, it's Steve from the garden. In this video we're going to go on a June garden tour to see what's growing. And as you can see behind me, my sour cherry tree is got cherries loaded up. I've actually picked quite a number of them. I'm going to turn into like a cherry cheesecake. But even with what I picked and what the birds have already gotten, they're still loaded up here. So the birds will have quite a feast grabbing the rest. The strawberry bed that's in the tall metal bed, this has been filling in really nicely. You know, I started off with like maybe a dozen plants. Then with the runners, I'm just rooting them into the ground so that they continue to fill up the bed. The Honeycrisp apple tree is continuing to swell the fruit. So that one's doing well, along with my older unknown variety of apples, except for the ones where I grafted on some scions. My Granny Smith apple tree, I didn't think I was going to get anything on here, but I do got one apple up there. The kitchen herb bed is really going crazy. The oregano is spreading like crazy. I really cut this back hard like about a month ago, and you can see it's just filling out some more. The basil, I got to come through and clip that up. And I'll dehydrate the leaves. And then the thyme is filling in nicely. This is a catnip. I do this so that the neighbor's cats will come into the yard and hunt down the mice and help keep the rabbits at bay. So this is a Black Beauty zucchini. Actually, I got a total of 3 of them. We got fruit developing there. Some more in here. You can see how they're filling out. And along with this one, and this one will be ready for harvest in probably one more day. I got buckets of lettuce set up here. I've been picking the outer leaves on these, and then yesterday I harvested 2 full plants and then put new plants in place and picked out the outer leaves on this. These I'll probably end up just doing a full harvest because I got more plants lined up like these. My potatoes are continuing to grow taller. Now there is a little bit of dieback in some of these on the front, but you still have plenty of green on them. And these plants, you know, some of them are reaching like 4 feet tall. So lots of vegetation in here. And that's also why I like to use this overhead trellis system so that it keeps all of this vegetation contained instead of just flopping over and getting in the way of the pathway. This year I had a rather unusual occurrence with my garlic in that it produced scapes about 2 weeks early. And once they produce scapes, they're usually ready for harvest, 2 to 3 weeks later. But even like my Chestnut Red, which is my latest maturing variety, it also produced scapes about 2 weeks later, or 2 weeks earlier. But it was a little bit later than these other varieties. At this point, I'm just waiting for the plants to die back to the point where there's like, say, 5 good leaves. And then I'll go ahead and do a harvest at that time. You can see here that I do have some leaves that are starting to die back. So maybe, at least for this varieties, they're in here. There's actually a couple different varieties in this. But, it might be another week, maybe 2 when I start to do the harvest on it. On the other side of the bed, the onions are doing pretty well for the most part. I do have a couple oddball things I saw in here, but we'll get to those in just a second. Now on this side of the bed here, this is the Patterson, except for I got one here. It's got like a purplish red skin. So that one, even though the inside, if you look at it, it's green, but the outer part is like a purple. So maybe I had one seed in there that was not a Patterson. You can see they are starting to bulb. And over on this side of the bed, this is the candy. These are also starting to bulb. Now these are the intermediate day and the Patterson's a long day. So these will get harvested a little bit sooner than the Patterson's. But there's a nice one sizing up right there. Now let's cover the ones that are like odd. So like this, look at this. Instead of being like one bulb, it created like a bunch of like little bulbs here, which is, I've never seen that before with growing onions. That one's clearly going to be a very small one. Another really small one there. And we got another one that did the same thing where it formed a bunch of little bulbs for whatever reason. These are the 2nd generation candy onions. I had a couple plants that went to seed last year, so I gathered up the seeds and I replanted a couple of them this year. So we'll see how these turn out as a second generation. Here I got some feathered slow shove to fill up a space in this bed. This was supposed to be a purple coneflower, but they didn't really take off, and I think the rabbit's been eating some of that. Second round of basil, which I need to start cutting. And the rest is various types of peppers. So I've got cayennes that are already starting to turn red. I got some bell peppers. Now these bell peppers will turn yellow once they mature. More cayennes that are maturing here. These are Santa Fe's. Now if you've never grown Santa Fe peppers before, they start off with a pale yellow like this. Then they'll turn an orange color, and then they finish as a red color. That's one of the reasons I like growing them, is that I can pick them at different colors, and then I can chop them up and use them in salsa. That way the salsa has like a mix of different colored peppers to add some visual interest to it. Down on this end, this is paprika. So this is a bulldog paprika. And we got Alma paprika, and some of these are starting to turn color. This one is loading up really nicely. This is another bulldog paprika, and you can see how big these are getting. This is my planting of sweet corn for this year. This is my first planting, which was started indoors. And behind it is the second planting, also started indoors 1 week after this planting. I didn't get very good germination rate when I started these, so I started a second set pretty quickly afterward. And in this bed here in the front, we got the third, fourth, and the fifth planting, all direct sown, all about 2 weeks apart from each other. On my first planting of sweet corn, actually I'm getting silks now, along with the tassels, and I hand pollinate these, and I'll show you that in just a second. So for pollination, I don't leave it to chance. You probably don't catch this in the camera, but there's pollen falling off the tassel here, so I just cut a piece off, and I rub it here on the silks. As to give them adequate pollination, not relying on the wind. In the middle of the bed between the first and second plantings, I had a space, so I just planted some zinnias in there. That'll bring in some color and some pollinators. Now the second planting is also starting to throw up the tassels, but these plants are getting a little bit taller than those first plantings. I would not normally expect plants at the height of the first plantings to start producing tassels and silks at this point, but maybe they got a little bit stressed out when I started them early this year, or the unusual hot temperatures we had maybe stressed them out and are causing them to tassel and silk early. The variety of sweet corn I'm growing is called Yellowstone, and in the past I've had this plant produce like 2, even sometimes 3 ears of corn per plant. This is my tomato bed this year. So along the trellis with the cattle panel, this is mostly San Marzanos. Then on the end is speckled Roman. This is a birdhouse gourd. I'm just growing up the edge, and I'll run it across the very top. And you can see it's starting to produce like little flowers and stuff. So I should start getting some little baby gourds starting to form within the next couple of weeks. Over on this side, over here I have a cherry variety called Britain's Breakfast. Over here I have Torringina, which is similar to Sungold. The Britain's Breakfast forms a great shaped sized tomato, and you can see it produces these branches that just kind of sprawl in all directions. No other tomato I've grown does it quite like this, and this is my first time growing them, so we'll just see how that goes. In this plant, I will single stem going up. The Torringina is also starting to produce. I haven't picked any yet because they haven't turned all the way orange, but you can see they're forming. The Torringina will be a dual stem. The main stem will go up the pole, and I have a second stem that's going to go up to the string on the diagonal, and that'll just let me get a little bit more production out of it. For the San Marzanos, some of the plants I'm just going to single stem up the wire trellis here, and others I'll do a dual stem. Like this one's going to be a dual, and this one's going to be a double here. Now I had one where I cut off a sucker that had gotten pretty good size, and I just stuck it in the ground right next to the drip tape, and you can see it's starting to grow, so I'll just grow that one up the pole here. And that'll help make up for this one that was intentionally planted, but really hasn't grown as much as these other ones. So this will be a dual stem, single, and these are the speckled Roman. And a couple of these plants I'm also going to double stem here. You can see I got clips for them to get going. This will be a single stem on the speckled Roman. This is another birdhouse gourd that I'll run just like the other one, where basically I'm just weaving it through the cattle panel, and then I'll go up and follow the top here. These two are red snapper, which I'm doing on the Florida weave. You can see they're starting to produce some clusters in here, and you can look down in here and there's some big ones starting to form. On the end of the bed, this is a summer pick, and we got tomatoes forming here. This is also on the Florida weave. Now these 4 in a row here, these are fresh salsa. This one here hasn't been growing as fast or as vigorous as the other 3. I did give it a little bit extra fertilizer and a good helping of some worm casting, so we'll see if doing that helps it to catch up with these other 3. And last, this is another San Marzano that was just like an extra I had, so I just put it in here. And I cut off another sucker that's also a San Marzano. That sucker was, only maybe like this tall when I put it in, but since it's got access to water from the drip tape, I figure I can just kind of stem it up the pole over here, and if necessary I can lean it against the back cattle panel. Then all these plants through here, these are all the jalapenos, and I have been picking some already, and I got some more that are starting to turn color. Got a nice big one forming there, some more here. This one's getting some striations on it. Coming up here we have our watermelons. Over here is our watermelons. I have 3 plants here, there, and then on the end. Those are orange crisp. They're a seedless watermelon that's orange. And then my pollinator is going to be crimson sweet, so I got one here and one in the center of the other 2. Now I grow the watermelons in this area just because, it's kind of protected, and I can sprawl the plants over all this extra vegetation here, and if it covers them up, it's no big deal. And that way it stays out from the grass here. This last plant here, this is another bell pepper. This one also turns yellow when it's fully ripe. In the back here, you can see these are the raspberries. I got raspberries forming already. These are actually maturing a little bit faster than normal, and that I've already started picking raspberries, and it's not even July yet, so they're like a good 2 weeks early also. I'm going to finish up the tour with the grapes here. This is a Concord grape. You can see I got some nice clusters of grapes forming on here. This morning I did go through and do some trimming in here to trim off extra vegetation and trim off some of the clusters of grapes so that the plant puts energy into the remaining clusters so that they get nice size. I hope you enjoyed the tour today. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Behind me here, this is a cardinal climber. I just have it running up the metal conduit. It's winding up, and then you'll see it forms all these little flowers here. I planted this to help attract hummingbirds, and we'll see as the flowers start coming on if the hummingbirds come and enjoy the nectar from them. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed, got something out of this, and we'll see you on the next one. In case you're wondering how I keep the raccoons and all that from getting into my sweet corn, it's because I have an electric poultry fence here that surrounds the area. That if raccoons do try to get in there, one, the fence is, kind of bouncy. It makes it hard for them to climb over, and the electrical shock will help keep them deterred.